Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and hey, you can do this. Because this is Airwindows LRConvolve3. Now, you might remember convolve as being a thing that did the Swedish Chef voice for something like this.
Amounts to downright.
But this is not that plugin, because my idea here was I wanted to come up with a convolve that would work more like taking an instrument and putting another instrument on it. So what you heard at the very beginning was actually this. That's two unrelated tracks. So the idea is, if you convolve them, you're making a sort of horrifying ring modulator thing out of them. But what if you could convolve them to have one track playing, but use the other track for the dynamic envelope? And that's what you heard for the start. You can turn it on. We're listening to the guitar, but the rhythm is the drums. And we've got a control called smooth, which can just smooth out the dynamics of it. And you turn smooth down to tighten it up. This is to bring out a little bit more of sustain in that behavior. And we can even use it for things like, for instance, this. So that's kind of what I wanted to be able to do with the original LRConvolve. And it did good Swedish Chef noises, but it wasn't really able to do this. If you're curious, here is the underlying sound. See, it's a race car. And then if we convolve that with LRConvolve3, what we get is a race car acting like a drum. There you have it. That's basically the deal for this one. I've been real busy building things, and I'm going to bring you up to speed on some of that stuff. But this weekend, plugin-wise, I am simply dropping LRConvolve because I've been sitting on it, and it's kind of cool. It's a variation on the LRConvolve thing that I've been doing. So again, this is not the one that gives you the Swedish Chef voice. This is not the one that gives you like a literal ring modulation behavior or a ring modulation behavior with that aura control in it. But what this is this is the one that can essentially take your left or right, and you get to choose which one you're going to end up hearing and which one's to provide the envelope, and basically map it onto the other channel and center it in the middle. So there you are. Now, some of the other things that I've been working on are kind of interesting. I have gotten back into things with the little breadboard here. I'm still working on getting together stomp boxes for guitars, and you can see I'm trying to fit them onto a perf board as a substrate for building these things. Some of the experimenting that I was doing was kind of neat in that I've been working with a combination of transistors that Devi ever favors, and rightly so. It turns out it's a really good combination. But I wanted to see what else, and I think it's PNP transistors, could work and what would happen. So I tried a couple of other variations on the subject, and the original Stompbox idea is sort of a saturated, fuzzboxy, chuggy kind of thing. But I could swap it out for another transistor, of which I have some of them, and get kind of a weird high-waddy, punchy thing, which was much lower gain. But then I could also do one where I got a real Fendery vibe off of it, And that's interesting to me. It suggests that maybe what I'm going to do is have some variations on these. And basically what I have to do is start building them and then using them in songs and things so people can hear what they do. And then you get to literally buy the one that I used. And I'll make another one to replace it and use that. So that should be interesting. It's always kind of weird for me when I start doing that, because I'm always getting like YouTube comments being like, you know that your music is garbage, right? Why don't you have me give you stems? And I'm assuming that people are like, I could whip those up in Suno in a moment and then it'll be much better off. And it's like, you're really missing something there. It's not necessarily that, but that's the line of thinking, the modern, heavily produced line of thinking. And it goes to some funny places. Like there has been a recent controversy from a guy, I believe Jim Lill, who did some comparisons with preamps, not unlike the preamps that I use in things, but making the case that all preamps sound exactly the same as a Focusrite Scarlett, and attempting to prove this. Well, firstly, Dan Worrell followed up on that and was like, you know that that's not the one that has an output transformer, right? And that is a very salient observation. Like the ones that I have aren't Neve, but they do still have output transformers as well as input transformers. The ones that Jim was using were electronically balanced outputs, which is supposed to be just as good. Certainly as accurate. Accurate is not always what's going to get you there. And the world has been lighting up over this preamp comparison business for weeks. It's like not letting go. It's showing up everywhere that I talk to musicians and producers and engineers and things. And I think I have a final word on this. Namely, Console X3 is coming along pretty good. I've been working on it. It is the one with the radical experiments on things, and also I'm bringing in the original Airwindows meter for showing pictures of things properly. And I'm putting in a switch where you can switch between whether you're looking at peaks or slew or zero cross. And I've got a variety of things, including Dynamics 3 from last week. I've also got an upgrade to the most recent Bezier Q, which should be quite interesting. I'm bringing all of that stuff into Console X3 and feel like once I've done that, I'll be able to start recording music. And I've been trying to evolve my way of getting around recording music again, even though people are going to make fun. And one of the things I'm doing is practicing instruments more than I ever used to. That really ought to help. Today, for the first time, not only did I practice drums on a little practice pad and tapping my foot on the ground, but also bass and then also guitar. And I practiced all those things to a metronome just so that I can do better than I used to be able to do. And that should really help, because part of what my concept of sound engineering is being able to absolutely present in the clearest and most visceral possible way the presence of a musical performer there, rather than the abstraction of one that you might get out of an MP3 or Suno or whatever. And I think that reality and presence carries across, and that's one of the things that always gets me, because I'm able to do sound engineering in such a way that you can clearly get every little instant of my melodic and timing sense, whether that's good or not. And so since every little error is made extremely obvious, people get to jump down my throat about it. Whereas if I blurred everything out and made it be very generic, it would be much less obvious and much less easy to pick out. But I mean, I know what I like. I know what I want. And I have a fancy for some of the stuff that was done back in the day when, these Neve preamps or whatever were the thing that people had. So here is my proposition. for this coming, it's going to be Christmas. I have my Santa hat and everything. I can wear that for big drops of console versions and things. And I have promised a thing back in the day where I figured I could probably work out things like the TG12345 recording console and get sounds that are about like that. I've got good examples of that sound. For instance, for the patron-only video that I post this week, it's actually going to be The Gold That's in the by Pink Floyd from the album Obscured by Clouds, which has that same basic sound that they got off a Dark Side of the Moon with the TG12345 console. Well, it's not necessarily the same console, but they were getting the same sound, or a practice version of that sound, on Obscured by Clouds. And I can study that stuff. So I can work on getting sounds like that, or I can work on getting sounds like the Forbidden Music post for this week, which is the Beatles single We Can Work It Out. And that is the EMI Red console, a classic old tube console that did everything from all the Beatles except for Abbey Road to the earliest of Pink Floyd and all manner of other stuff. And if I work at it, I can probably get the sound of that by Christmas for a special console post that people can play with. I get to study old things. Or I could do a perfect version of that Scarlett Focusrite preamp if you want. Let me know what you want in the plugins. Let me know what you want in the comments. Would you like me to do the EMI Red, or would you like me to do the Focusrite Scarlett? Up to you. I enjoy doing some vintage things sometimes. And one of the things that I've been talking about, apart from like the stomp box making and so on, is I've been doing spring cleaning and have been working on refurbishing a bunch of books. I've talked about that sometimes. I thought I'd show you one of them and a little perspective on the events of these days, whether it be the Jim Lill preamp discussion or current events or whatever. It's nice to get a sense of perspective. So when we're all really worried about records and recordings, well, one of the things that I'm doing is cleaning off some mold that got on the cover of these books. And these books are Encyclopedia Britannica, but not a reissue. These are the real deal. And I'm happy that I didn't put them in a dumpster, either when I got them from my parents, when I was working with cleaning out that house, or more recently, because it turns out they cleaned up pretty good. And there's cool things in here. For instance, I can look up recordings. And it's not there. This was 1910. So you have record, and record means writing stuff down to keep it. And then you've got recorder. And recorder is one who sets down and records. And then you've also got recorder, which is Fipple flute or English flute. Again, this was 1910. This was before World War I. So it's like the last burst of essentially British imperialism. And they thought that they had the world solved and they were just writing the things down. Now, I'll point out, they do have some cool things back in 1910. You didn't even have a wire recorder, to the best of my knowledge. Certainly, recorder is not any kind of sound recorder, but you had 3-color process: yellow, red, blue, and a color print in 1910. It's not the most high fidelity color you ever saw in the world, but this is the real deal. Color plate out of the 1910 Britannica. So, I care about some of these things. They're neat. And it provides a useful sense of perspective and helps keep me with things to think about as I continue doing my work, which is going to involve getting Console X3 ready, because I've talked a little bit about how I did a Console X2, and that's using Smooth EQ for a primary EQ. And it's based on like biquad filters and does a really good job of accurately making frequencies go, to the point where you can kind of use Smooth EQ2 to do just about anything you want. And then I put it into Console X3 and didn't like it or enjoy what I was getting out of it. And I finally figured out why. It's because it's a little bit like another thing that I believe I posted for patrons, which is a Steve Winwood mix of Back in the High Life, famously an early mix by the Lord Alges, Tom Lord Alge in this case. And I've talked about how it is such an exciting, interesting mix that all of the sounds are really novel, distinct, and creatively placed, to the point that you would never know that James Taylor is also singing on that song. And that is neat, and it's interesting, and people have been doing stuff with that for the last 20 years in modern recording. And it's completely gone away from being able to instantly recognize who is doing the singing. So I'm working on getting back to recording systems, recordings like that they didn't have in 1910. It's not in the encyclopedia in 1910, recording being like a sound recording or anything like that. And you'd think that they would have that, because didn't they have like those wax drum recorders from Edison or whatever? But I don't know. In any case, I'm working on Console 3. It should be coming out not before. I've got somebody who's really hot for me to put out Purist Console 4. And Purist Console 4 is likely also going to need me to record music for it. I might as well, because it's that or reuse the stuff that I keep reusing. And I always do that. But for the console versions, I need to have multi-tracks that lend themselves to what I'm doing. And yeah, I'm also going to be looking to support a couple of people who have useful plugin releases. There's soft synths, and I got into a conversation recently about how people are like, all of the soft synths are exactly as good as all of the hardware. And I'm like, dude, I have Innovation Summit. It doesn't sound like a Moog, but it still does something special. I have modules in my Eurorack thing, which are Music Thing modular chord organs that have been overclocked to run 300 kilohertz sampling rate and up, and that gives them a purer sound because of naively doing sampling rate, much like the Innovation Summit does. But I do like certain soft synths, and so I'm going to be following up on a soon-to-come-out 6 Sines release. It's moving past its 1.0 and 1.1 versions. There's a new version of that coming out. And, of course, Sudara's 6 Sines. Sudara is, of course, the person to whom you owe all of the Console X's and all the consoles with GUIs. Because without his pample juice, I wouldn't be anywhere with that stuff. And, yeah, there's lots of stuff to do. I will get right on it. All of this is supported by the Patreon. I'm still not quite paying my bills, but I'm just running a credit card thing and stuff. And many people do that, so no big deal. But the Patreon does seem to be working to try to catch me up, and I'd love that. I'm getting another cord of firewood in about a week and a half, just so that I have the winter taken care of. And once I have that, I can work on paying off debts and things. And the Patreon is basically the only reason that I can ever do that. It's not like YouTube is going to be paying me anything. So, well, maybe if I made videos like Jim Lello. No, that's not. I will talk to you later, and I'm going to get back to work. Bye-bye.